Well, hello. I have decided to look at Genesis 2:7 this week for our Hebrew. And so if you have a little facility with Hebrew, see if you can do that first line. Uh, Vayitzer Yahweh Elohim et ha'adam afar min ha'adamah. Okay, what is this saying? Vayitzer, and he formed. That is, Yahweh God formed. And by the way, for those of you who think about the various source hypotheses of the Pentateuch, you'll notice that now that we are in Genesis 2, that we are no longer talking simply about Elohim. So all of Genesis 1 is an Elohim did this, and Elohim did that. God did this, God did that. Now that we're in chapter 2, we have Yahweh Elohim. And so again, you don't have to buy this at all. I'm not an Old Testament scholar even, but just to inform you of some of the theories that are out there, those who believe in a Yahweh source, a J source, because the Germans pronounce a J as Yah, would say that now that we're in chapter 2, beyond verse 3, that we now are into the J source. The Yahweh source. That there was, the hypothesis goes like this: there was another source that is also in Genesis that Julius Wellhausen called the E source because it only used Elohim. Now, I'm not sure, it seems to me that I've heard that the idea of an E source has fallen somewhat on hard times, although I don't know what the alternative explanation is. In any case, Genesis 1 is not thought to be from an E source, even though it consistently uses Elohim. Genesis 1 is generally thought in the source theory, the documentary hypothesis, to have come from a priestly editor who put the whole thing together. And so Genesis 1 would be kind of like an introduction at the very beginning. Again, I'm not an expert on such things, but I will note it is true, one way or the other, that once we get into Genesis 2:5 and beyond, we're now into not just Elohim, but Yahweh Elohim. So, and Yahweh Elohim formed Et Ha'adam, the man. Now, Adam, in Genesis 1, 26 and 27, I translated Adam as human, the human. But here it's clearly referring, well, I would say it's clearly referring to the Adam. Now, Adam is the man. I still think it's better to translate it the man here rather than the Adam. But we are talking about the male. There have, of course, been some interesting interpretations that have seen Ha'adam as androgynous until God pulls the woman out of him. Don Joy at Asbury Seminary used to have this theory. But, actually, John Walton's interpretation of Genesis 1, he doesn't exactly say that, but he said some things that made me think of that in his book on the lost world of Adam and Eve. But anyway, I don't think it's saying, I don't think we should understand Adam here as a both male and female, and God separates them out. I don't think that's what is being said here. But anyway, the man. Afar is dust, min ha'adamah. Notice the similarity between Adam, man, and Adamah, ground. The very word Adam, human, has a affinity to the idea of the ground. We come from the ground. Dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return. And interestingly enough, and Walton argues this, that the fact that man is made of dust suggests that he is mortal in Genesis 2 when humanity is created, that God did not create humanity immortal here. Otherwise, why would he be made of dust? And this would be supported by the idea that the reason why Adam and Eve cannot live forever is because they cannot eat from the tree of life. Genesis 3 at least seems to imply that Adam and Eve's default is to die, and that the reason why they could have lived forever would have been because they could have partaken of the tree of life. Again, you don't have to agree with that. I am simply trying to infer things from the text, trying to listen to what the text seems to be saying in this particular place. That may be a wrong interpretation, but that, this Walton makes some sense when he talks about the afar as an implication of mortality, the dustness of humanity, because the dustness of humanity in the Old Testament is always connected to man's finitude and mortality, the fact that he is temporary and transitory, and she, and that we return to the ground. Anyway, so this relates to the body part of us. We are body. God created us from the dust, vayapak, and God breathed. He breathed ba'apai in his nose. So the ba is in, the holum is, I guess I should say, ba'apaiv. The vav here is his, in his, and then af is nose. Now, it might be plural there with the yod, so maybe nostrils is better. Let me go ahead and put nostrils. There we go. It's got two. We got two of them. What did he breathe into his nostrils? The nishmat, kayim, the breath of life. So patak tav is a feminine construct, so breath of. The of comes from the patak tav there. Breath of life, kayim. Now, notice, what is breath here? Breath is not, this is not spirit in a detachable, eternal kind of sense. This is breath, right? This is God breathing into us life, the breath of life. Like when you give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, you are breathing life into the person. God gives mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to Adam, as it were, and Adam becomes a living soul. Vayehi ha'adam, and the man became a nefesh kaya. This is la, two, and nefesh. Now, soul, living soul is the way the King James puts it, but that is misleading, because there is no sense of a detachable soul in the Old Testament. The nefesh is the livingness, the living whole of a person. Man became a living whole. Humanity became a living being, as almost all translations now would put it. I'm not sure what the New King James does. By the way, a nefesh kaya is not just a human. Genesis 1 calls the creatures in the sea nefesh kaya, kayim. So it's a living creature. Man became a living creature, a living being. It's not about a detachable soul. We have in this verse the Hebrew psychology as it is. Remember, and again, I would make the claim that pictures of human psychology in both the Old and the New Testament are exactly that. They are pictures. They are pictures that come from the worldviews of the ancient Near East in the sense of the Old Testament, or from, say, either the Jewish or sometimes the Hellenistic Greek worldview. And so when we read, "May God sanctify your whole body, soul, and spirit," that is a picture of what a human is. It's a completely true picture. Again, I hope you understand what I'm saying. It is a true picture, but it is a picture that comes out of Greek paradigms. It is not a absolute eternal picture of what human psychology is. It is a true picture incarnated in the worldview of the day. And so that is a different picture in 1 Thessalonians 5:23 than the picture of humanity and human psychology here in Genesis 2. Here we have a body with breath in it, and that's a living soul or a living being. Here we are dust, we are breath, and together that makes a living being. Well, Genesis 2:7. I love this verse. It's fun. So next week, Our Hebrew will either come from, I think I'll do the helper verse in Genesis 2 next Monday. So have a great week.